The biggest news story the world is tracking is the war in Ukraine and the hectic diplomatic activity to strike peace. And with me today is the man at the center of those conversations, the Foreign Minister of Ukraine, Mr. Andrii Sybiha. Minister Sybiha, welcome to the first post Raisina Dialogue Ideas Pod.
My pleasure, Nona. Thanks a lot for this invitation and for this opportunity.
The first question that I have for you, and I'm sure the whole world wants an answer to, is do you think there will be peace this year? The war will end this year?
We believe, and we do really want to end this war this year. Probably all of us are united by this strategic goal to achieve just, comprehensive, long-lasting peace. We had, and after Jeddah, probably, we got additional impulse to achieve this peace. We sped up our efforts, our peace efforts, to achieve once again this peace this year. Ukraine supported US proposal of the ceasefire, temporary ceasefire, and now we are expecting the response from Russian side to accept unconditional ceasefire. It will be a huge step forward to make this peace closer.
Is Ukraine prepared to pay the price for that peace?
You see, we are the country which is suffering from this Russia aggression. 20% of our territory recently under temporary Russian occupation. But also I would like to remind that after 24th of the 2022, and by the way, you visited Ukraine in February 2022, and we do really appreciate this. Ukraine managed to liberate 50% of occupied territories. Nobody believed in Ukraine. Many countries gave us 3 days for our survival, but we prevailed. And of course, we are the country which is mostly interested in achieving just and last and comprehensive peace. No compromises at the cost of territorial integrity and sovereignty. No Minsk III or Yalta II. Nothing about Ukraine without Ukraine. These fundamental points which we need to keep in mind with regard of our peace efforts.
You mentioned February 2022. The world is very different today than it was, including the man in power in Washington, D.C. Do you think that Ukraine is at its weakest position today in this war?
You see, we need to restore world order based on international law. This war is not about Ukraine. This war about restoration of the world order based on respect of territorial integrity and sovereignty, UN Charter. Yes, we should be in more strong position. That's why we need support of international community, of our partners, diplomatical support, economical support, humanitarian support, because it is in the interest of all countries that in Ukraine just and comprehensive peace will be settled, to avoid and to prevent the same developments, I mean, like we had with Russian aggression in other geographies, not to encourage other actors in the world, on the world arena to act the same way. So that's why just and comprehensive, long-lasting peace.
You see, what should be and what is are usually two different things.
But we are very realistic. We understand very well.
But so you've not answered my question. Do you think Ukraine is the weakest today that it has been in this war? Because you had some control of Russian territory in Kursk. That control is slipping. Your alliance with Washington looks not as solid as it did some 6 months back. And your dependence on Europeans comes with its own risks because Europe itself depends on the United States for security. So how is Ukraine poised?
Russia didn't achieve any strategic goal in Ukraine. They didn't achieve. We have probably the most strongest army on European continent, approximately 1 million soldiers with a combat daily experience.
Then how have you lost 20% of your territory?
Because you could compare Ukraine and Russia, 26 times bigger with nuclear capacities. And we prevailed despite everything. We prevailed and managed to liberate 50% of occupied territories. We managed to establish grain corridor in the Black Sea and to restrict capacities of the Russian Black Fleet. Our economy works. Also, we are not alone. We have partners and allies which contributed a lot in our resilience, and we are thankful. We are thankful to all of our partners, and here I would like also to express gratitude to India, to your great country, for the constant support of our territorial integrity and sovereignty. And the visit of your Prime Minister last August was really very important and historical one. So having such challenges, we keep situation under the control. Once again, under the control. Russians, they didn't manage to occupy. You see, any strategic point in Ukraine. Any strategy. They didn't. We liberated, for example, Kherson, one of the regional
Minister Sybiha,
centers. Yes.
are you weaker today than you were ever in this war, is my question. It's a yes or no question.
We could be more stronger.
Yes.
That's true. But having the support of international community, we could proceed and we could achieve just and comprehensive and lasting peace.
President Trump said to President Zelensky that you don't have any cards. And it snowballed into a difficult conversation. What leverage does Ukraine have at this point?
I believe in the strength of my people. I believe in the strength of our soldiers. We have this spirit, high and moral, to resist. So once again, we want to end this war this year. We need support of international community because it's about principles. It's about principles and restoration of the old order based on international law.
Do you believe that your president was insulted in the meeting with Donald Trump at the White House?
President Zelensky is the president of the country which is in war.
Yes.
So that's why he protected his country, he protected his people.
It's a yes or no question.
I explained the position of the president which is in war, of the country which is in war.
I'll tell you why I asked this, because the Americans are mediating this conversation. And do you believe that after what happened in the Oval Office, do you see them as fair arbitrators?
We had really very constructive and productive meeting in Jeddah. We put our bilateral relations on a proper diplomatic way. We gave a good impulse for the intensification, for the further intensification of our bilateral contacts at all levels. We accepted their proposal of the ceasefire. We need American side. We need the engagement of American side. We need their leadership, and we believe that we have an additional opportunity with the President Trump to end this war this year.
He's going to be talking to President Putin today, and Russia has spelled out its position just like you have, and they have some clear demands, including no European soldiers as a peacekeeping force in Ukraine and so on. And it is believed that the United States may be inclined to give some of those concessions to the Russians. If that happens, are you ready to walk back on some of your demands?
Once again, Ukraine accepted this ceasefire unconditionally. The same we expect from Russian side. I remember, believe me, I remember very well first proposal from Russian side from the beginning of this brutal Russian aggression. It was the language of ultimatums and capitulation. They demanded our capitulation, and they didn't change their approach. They don't want to recognize us as an independent state. That's why it is so important to support this peace effort to achieve just and comprehensive, long-lasting peace. Once again, no restrictions of Ukrainian army capacities. What does it mean, just and comprehensive peace? No possibility to restrict our choice to become a member of any unions, of any allies. No compromises at the cost of our territorial integrity and sovereignty. Ukraine will never recognize any part of territories occupied by Russians. So all these things are crucial and fundamental in our peace process. Let's start to implement. Let's start with a ceasefire.
Do you think Russia will give up the territory that it controls? I mean, they have the upper hand, it seems, on the battlefield. The Ukrainian soldiers are on the back foot in
once again,
Kursk.
we will never recognize territories occupied by Russia. We will never recognize.
How do you
We
expect
have diplomatic
to
tools. We
Yes.
have diplomatic instruments. Now it's a time for diplomacy to demonstrate this power, to pressure. Also to pressure
do you
Russia.
think diplomacy will work after more than 2 years of war and thousands of sanctions?
I believe, yes. We could.
What gives you the
we
confidence?
could try to use diplomacy. For example, this meeting in Jeddah.
Yes.
It was really important one, and we could expect further developments. Let's give a chance to diplomacy.
But that meeting came after a lot of pressure from your allies in the US.
So let's give a chance to diplomacy to use all the instruments to achieve just and comprehensive long-lasting
I think that would be the best, to give diplomacy a chance,
Yes.
and that is what India
and
has
we
also.
share this approach.
Absolutely, absolutely. And Ukraine's position vis-a-vis India has evolved considerably since the war began. I believe your predecessor said things like India has blood on its hands. And since then, we've seen the Prime Minister visit Kiev, and we've seen the coming together of both countries, and that is a very welcome step. But if you remain firm on your demands, and the Russians clearly are, with their gains both on the battlefield and increasingly it appears so at the talking table as well. If there is no ceasefire, do you propose to keep fighting?
We are ready to resist. We do not have another choice. For us, this war is an existential one. So we do not have another choice. That's why I am here also to conduct my meetings with my counterparts, to engage more support, to get more support for our diplomatic efforts. Once again, we do really have a chance, so-called diplomatic chance, to end this war this year, jointly.
If President Trump agrees to Russia's demands, what are your options?
Once again, we have our position. You ask me once again the same question.
Because you've not answered my question.
We have our position. We will keep this position because for us, we do not have another choice.
But how do you keep fighting?
Thanks a lot. We have enough capacities to keep fighting.
Right.
Yeah.
Thank you very much, Minister.
Thanks.